A reading from the book of the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 40, the Lord's return to Jerusalem, the future temple. In the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, 14 years to the day from the fall of the city, the hand of the Lord was upon me. He carried me away. In divine visions he carried me away to the land of Israel and put me down on a very high mountain, on the south of which there seemed to be built a city. He took me to it, and there I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. He had a flax cord and a measuring rod in his hand and was standing in the gateway. The man said to me, "Son of man, look carefully, listen closely, and pay attention to everything I show you, since you have been brought here for me to show it to you. Tell the house of Israel everything that you see." The outer wall. Now the temple was surrounded on all sides by an outer wall. The man was holding a measuring rod over 2 meters long, 6 times a forearm and a hand's breadth. He measured the thickness of the wall, 1 rod, and its height, 1 rod. The east gate. Then he went to the east gate, climbed the steps and measured its threshold, 1 rod deep. Each guardroom measured 1 rod by 1 rod, and the piers between the guardrooms 2 meters thick, and the threshold of the gate inwards from the entrance hall 1 rod. He measured the entrance hall 4 meters, its piers 1 meter. The entrance hall itself was at the inner end. There were 3 guardrooms on each side of the east gate, all 3 of the same size. The piers between them on each side were all of the same thickness. He measured the width of the entrance 4 meters, and the width all down the gateway 6 meters. There was a rail in front of the guardroom. The rail on either side was half a meter, and the guardrooms on either side were 3 meters square. He measured the width of the gate from the back wall of one guardroom to the back wall of the other. It was 11 meters across, the openings being opposite each other. He measured the porch, 10 meters. The court surrounded the gate on all sides, from the front of the entrance gate to the far end of the entrance hall, 22 meters. All round inside the gate, there were trellised windows in the guardrooms and in their piers. Similarly, in the porch, there were windows all round and palm trees on the piers. The outer court. He then took me to the outer court, which had rooms and a paved terrace going all the way round. There were 30 rooms on this terrace. This terrace, which came up to the sides of the gates and matched their depth, was the lower terrace. He measured the width of the court from the front of the lower gate to the facade of the inner court outside, 44 meters on the east and on the north. The north gate. He measured the length and breadth of the north gate of the outer court. It had 3 guardrooms on each side. Its piers and porch were of the same size as those of the first gate, 22 meters long and 11 meters wide. Its windows, its porch, and its palm trees were of the same size as those of the east gate. There were 7 steps up to it, and its porch was at the inner end. In the inner court, there was, opposite the north gate, a gate like the one opposite the east gate. He measured the distance from one gate to the other, 44 meters, The south gate. He took me to the south side, where the south gate was. He measured its guardrooms, piers, and porch. They were of the same size as the others. The gateway, as well as its porch, had windows all round like the windows of the others. It was 22 meters long and 11 meters wide, and it had 7 steps up to it. Its porch was at the inner end and had palm trees on its piers, one on either side. The inner court had a south gate. He measured the distance southwards from one gate to the other, 44 meters. The inner court. He then took me into the inner court by the south gate. He measured the south gate, which was of the same size as the others. Its guardrooms, piers, and porch were of the same size as the others. The gateway, as well as its porch, had windows all round. It was 22 meters long and 11 meters wide. The porch gave onto the outer court. It had palm trees on its piers and 8 steps leading up to it. The east gate. He took me to the eastern part of the inner court and measured the gate. It was of the same size as the others. Its guardrooms, piers, and porch were of the same size as the others. The gateway, as well as its porch, had windows all round. It was 22 meters long and 11 meters wide. Its porch gave onto the outer court. There were palm trees on its piers on either side and 8 steps leading up to it. The north gate. He then took me to the north gate and measured it. Its guardrooms, piers, and porch were of the same size as the others. The gateway had windows all round. It was 22 meters long and 11 meters wide. Its porch gave onto the outer court. There were palm trees on its piers on either side and 8 steps leading up to it. Subsidiary buildings. There was a room, the entry to which was in the entrance hall where they washed the burnt offerings. And inside the entrance hall were tables, 2 on either side, for slaughtering the burnt offerings, the sin offerings, and the guilt offerings. Outside, at the approach to the entrance of the north gate, were 2 blocks, and on the other side at the entrance hall were 2 blocks. There were 4 blocks on one side and 4 blocks on the other side of the gateway, 8 blocks in all, on which the slaughtering was done. There were also blocks of dressed stone for the burnt offerings, 1 meter long, 1 meter wide and a half, 1 meter high, on which the instruments for slaughtering the burnt offerings and sacrifice were placed. Runnels, a hand's breadth wide, went all round the top, and on these tables was put the sacrificial meat. Then he took me into the inner court. There were 2 rooms in the inner court, one on the side of the north gate, facing south, the other on the side of the south gate, facing north. He told me, the room looking south is for the priests responsible for the service of the temple, and the room looking north is for the priests responsible for the service of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, those of the sons of Levi who approach the Lord to serve him. He measured the court. It was 44 meters long and 44 meters wide, a square, with the altar standing in front of the temple. The entrance hall. He took me to the entrance hall of the temple and measured the piers of the entrance hall, 2 meters on either side, and the width of the entry was 1.5 meters either side. The length of the entrance hall was 9 meters and its width 4 meters. There were 10 steps leading up to it, and there were columns by the piers, one on either side. The word of the Lord.